The reason, in my opinion, that it was a blanket pardon is because Joe Biden knows that there's a lot more there, and this covered everything.
His Department of Justice slow-rolled this entire investigation into Hunter Biden's foreign business ties. Hunter Biden did way more with these foreign governments without disclosing it than even somebody like a Paul Manafort did. Got completely away with it. The tax fraud he wasn't filing tax returns. He was hiding income. He was saying that his payments to strippers and prostitutes were business expenses. And then he wanted to turn around and say, and any one of us, no one would have been prosecuted for that kind of behavior. No one would have been prosecuted. He only got targeted because his name is Hunter Biden. It's like, I can guarantee you, Sean Spicer, you 100% would have been prosecuted for doing 1/10 of what Hunter Biden did.
All right, guys, it is Christmas Eve. It's Tuesday. I'm excited. I always love this time of the year, don't you? So much to be thankful for, grateful for. Good conversation headed your way with Megyn Kelly. And a lot. I'm going to break down for you some insight I have about the White House briefing room that I don't think you'll hear anywhere else, because there's very few other people that have been the White House press secretary for Donald Trump that are talking about this. So one of them is the governor of Arkansas, my former deputy. She's not going to talk about it. Anyway, this is where you'll learn something that with all, I just don't think many people, and there's a lot of stuff online about what they should do in the briefing room. I'll tell you all that. Before I do that, I want to tell you about a great guy, a good friend of mine, Leo Grillo. He's the founder of Delta Rescue. He rescued one dog, a Doberman, that he initially named Delta, and that stood for dedication and everlasting love to animals. Leo took this one dog and sort of got a calling to do more. And it's amazing what he's done. It's a no-kill sanctuary. You've heard me, I think, probably talk about it if you're a long-time listener of the show. He made it the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. Delta Rescue is the world's largest no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter. And when I talked to Leo the first time I met him, I had sort of mentioned, I've rescued dogs from shelters. And he said, Sean, just so we're clear, that's not what Delta Rescue is all about. We're not a shelter. We're not looking to get dogs and cats and other animals adopted. We're looking to take care of them for life. Like if they're malnutritioned, if they need veterinarian care, if they're abandoned or abused, Delta Rescue is the home for all of them, which is so cool. And the thing is, he doesn't look for some big government handout. It's because of people like me and you that do all this. So if you can help Leo Grillo, if you're an animal lover, if you've rescued animals, and like I said, he takes them all in. It's not just dogs. It's not cats. It's not like he takes he is literally like Noah, bringing everything onto the ark. Great guy doing great things. And again, he's not looking for a government handout, but he's looking for animal lovers like us to help him out. So if you go to deltarescue.org, check out the videos. I'm amazed at how it's grown and what they do. So please consider a contribution at deltarescue.org. Nothing right now. If you know an animal lover and you're looking for that last minute Christmas gift, you got 24 hours. Well, not even. You got like 8. Go to Delta Rescue, give a contribution, and make it in someone's name and saying, hey, I know you're an animal lover. I got you something that will show you how much you care. Also, if you want to go to that estate planning kit at the top, consider an old 401k or an IRA or some stocks that you might want to leave your legacy to Delta Rescue. There could be some tax consequences in the short term for you, so it could be super helpful. But please consider going to deltarescue.org. Just check out the estate planning kit. Think about it, pray on it, consider it. I really appreciate it. deltarescue.org. All right, just a quick couple things. First of all, tomorrow is Christmas. A lot of us gather with family and friends. Not everybody is hardcore MAGA. Just remember, we won. They didn't. Don't take the bait. Donald Trump didn't take the bait. You've watched him in these interviews, right? So my only 2 cents is take your cues from Trump. Be nice. Welcome some of these folks into the fold, right? Help grow the movement. As Trump said so many times, these are common sense issues. Closing the border, stopping senseless spending, forever wars, putting our workers first, creating fair trade. These things all make sense, don't they? So try to find common ground, because listen, I get it. You guys have heard me say before, like sometimes I can be petty and mean, but politics is a game of addition. We need more people in the fold. And we saw in this election more people agreeing with Donald Trump, not the other side. Companies are giving up their woke policies. Anyway, just know, be better. Sounds like Melania Trump, doesn't it? Be best. But we won. We're going to govern. We have all 3 of the levers to do it. So welcome them into the tank, to the team. Say, we want you. Make them feel welcome. I'd rather them say, hey, I'm sorry about that. You're right. Joe Biden really, his policies are horrible. Good for you. Welcome. But don't, like I said, that's my 2 cents on this. Okay. I have an op-ed about changes that should be made to the White House briefing room. You won't hear this anywhere else because, and I'm going to talk to Megyn Kelly in just a minute about the media, but I want to tell you, like, probably this is more in the weeds, but this is the beauty of me hosting the show, is I can tell you stuff that nobody else knows, because you keep hearing about, well, the White House should let anyone in that it wants. Here's the deal, guys. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Anybody can go into the White House for the most part, not entirely, and I'll explain what I mean by that. The seating chart is a different story. So let me tell you, I wrote this op-ed. It's available at SeanSpicer.com if you go into the newsletter. But there are 2 fundamental aspects of the room. Who can get in and how do they get space? This is the op-ed that I wrote. It's in the Washington Times, but I put it at SeanSpicer.com. The White House press office is 100% in control of who gets in. The press secretary and the press office decide that. So if Joe Rogan wants to come, or Sean Spicer wants to come, or you want to come, and you local journalist, you blog, whatever, the White House press office 100% determines who gets a credential to come into the White House. There's a day pass, which good for a day, a week pass, and then there's what you'll hear people talk to, hard passes. That means you apply for permanent credentials, you go through a security check, the Secret Service performs, and then you get a work pass. You can come in and out of the White House basically anytime, into the press briefing room, into the workspaces. So when I was press secretary, I gave it to everybody. I didn't care. My view was, you know what? It just made life easy. You want to cover the White House, cover the White House. When Karine Jean-Pierre came in, she changed the game fundamentally. Okay. Her view was, I'm going to make it harder for independent journalists to come in. 400 independent journalists lost their hard passes. The first thing I think Caroline Leavitt and her team should do is restore those hard passes. So if you're me or a podcaster, you wouldn't do it. So she made the credentialing process so burdensome that you can't cover the White House anymore. And the dirty secret, to be honest with you, is that there's a lot of people in there who aren't necessarily bona fide journalists. There's historians that come every day to annotate press conferences, to do studies for think tanks and universities. Great. But she cut them all off. And I know that you didn't hear about this because the mainstream media didn't care, because their view was, hey, if we're in there and we get everything, screw you. It doesn't matter. So number one, restore the thing. And by the way, you didn't hear a peep from the White House Correspondents Association, the people that are supposed to care about the First Amendment and the media and democracy. They host a yearly liberal dinner with Hollywood types. That's their main function, to be honest with you. And their current president, who works for Politico, was basically auditioning during the campaign to be Kamala Harris's spokesperson. It was unbelievable. They care about themselves and protecting the status quo and protecting themselves. They want to protect Politico, CNN, Washington. They don't care about independent journalists. No. I mean, so now let's get to the seating chart. I want to just tell you, because that's different. Now, here's what you need to know. In 1992, the White House press office threw up its hands and say, no more. We're tired of the skirmishes and the infighting about who sits where in the briefing room. There's 49 seats, 7 rows of 7. So, you know what? You guys decide where y'all sit. We don't care. So the White House Correspondents Association since 1992 took it over. So let me read to you who sits in the front row. NBC News, Fox, CBS, the Associated Press, ABC, Reuters, CNN. The second row doesn't get much better. The Wall Street Journal, CBS News Radio, who knew that, whatever, Bloomberg, the NPR, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and USA Today. Pretty pathetic. Here's my question. Why? Why do they get to be all in the front row? Why? Because they want to make sure that they get that interaction. That's why. That's what they won't tell you that. But they want to stand up and yell and have what they call a cut camera, get them wagging their finger in the press secretary's face for their clip. So Caroline Leavitt has 2 options in bars. 3. She can keep the status quo, let them do what they do. 2, she could remake it in herself. Remember, it's not their room. It's the White House press briefing room. It's not the media's room. They own it. The government, the people. It's not the press's room. They use it. They sit down. Why do they get to decide who sits where? That's not, it's a government room. Blow it up. So either Caroline Leavitt should, one, determine who sits where, put a bunch of, makes ABC sit in the back row. By the way, you see this during my press conferences. If you're not one of those 49 that gets a seat, you can stand in the row in the back. Good luck getting a question answered under this regime anyway. So she should either reassign for you. But here's my idea. Blow it up. First come, first serve. Sit where you want. That's my 2 cents on this. I think we should just blow the whole thing up. Let people sit where they want. I mean, why are we in this day and age making it so that they all get the front row and everyone else gets to sit in the way back? Like, please, sir, may I have it? Screw that. Blow it up. They're entitled to nothing, especially after this election where long form media and podcasts ruled the day. Look, Trump will shake things up in Washington. The briefing room needs to be one of those places that he shakes up. Okay? All right, I'm about to bring in Megyn Kelly. I think you know who she is. But, I've told you this before. I've had trouble sleeping and falling asleep and I've tried everything. I've tried magnesium. I've tried melatonin, a bunch of other stuff. If you try Beam, this is what I'm talking about. And look at this one. This is empty. I crush this stuff, a scoop every night before I go to bed, 30 minutes before. And it has melatonin, magnesium, reishi, apigenin. It's full of all natural stuff. And this is the coconut cinnamon flavor. It's amazing. Last night I had the brownie one, and then there's the white peppermint one and a bunch of other flavors. They're all great. And if they didn't put you to sleep, I'd drink them all day long. But they're that good, by the way. And I'm not kidding when I say that good. You'll trust me when you try one of them. And if I were you, I'd order a couple of them because it's like choosing among your children which one's the greatest. The Beam flavors are all amazing. So I love this stuff. I take a scoop half hour before I go to bed, throw it in the microwave for between 30 seconds and 60 seconds, and then just sip that down. And then 30 minutes later, my head hits the pillow. I literally last night did not get up until, my alarm went off a little late. Raring to go. You feel great. Anyway, so if you want to try Beam's best-selling dream powder and get up to 40%, go to shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code Spicer, 40% off. That's shopbeam/Spicer, code Spicer for 40% off. Without further ado, the host of the Megyn Kelly Show, Megyn Kelly. Megyn, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. How are you?
I'm great. Although, my goodness, I feel like Joe Biden wanted to get back in the spotlight so bad. He was like, what can I do that will outdo Donald Trump? I know it's now been a few days, but you're a lawyer. You've been talking a lot about this on your show. What is, like, if there's one thing that stood out to you regarding this pardon, what was it?
Well, it's not the legal aspect. It's the leftist surprise.
You mean you thought it was coming all along?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Everyone did. Everyone who consumes media that is somewhat right of center suspected that. Only these lefties who are believing MSNBC, like, he's so noble. Look at the difference between him and Trump. This is why we need him or Kamala or a Democrat instead of the evil Trump. They respect the rule of law. Only those people are like, the betrayal. Or they're running with, genuine change of heart, under a dark sky in Nantucket. Yeah, it came to him that he needed more love in his life and he had to do this. Come on. Those of us who've been covering him honestly know he's a lying liar who lies. And we were not surprised to hear yet another lie proven out this week.
All right. You're the lawyer. I just watched Law and Order, but let me just play this with you as if you're the witness and I'm the lawyer. Ms. Kelly, you're a parent, correct?
Correct.
Would you say that as a parent, you would do anything for your child?
Pretty much.
Okay. So if you express concern for your child as a motive for doing something, do you think it's fair that if you're going to play that card, that you have to first agree to acknowledge all of your grandchildren?
I think, you can make the strong case. Yeah. Navy Biden deserved at least a shout out before we got to grandfather.
So the thing that I love is that he lied to us repeatedly. It wasn't like anyone didn't know that Hunter had addiction issues or had been convicted. And then suddenly it was like, but he was just being a concerned father. And I'm like, well, wait a second. What, he wasn't a concerned father a month ago, 2 months ago,
No.
5 months ago? And if you're going to allow him to play that card, how do you then not acknowledge that same child that you're concerned with's daughter?
Yeah. The existence of Navy Biden. Right. And he was so cruel, and so was his wife, Jill Biden, throughout on that. No, of course, no one who's been following this story thinks anything other than that Joe Biden is a cad. He's a terrible father. I mean, honestly, like, his daughter Ashley's got some very serious issues. Hunter's got some very serious issues. And I do believe they probably had an absentee dad for most of their life because he was in Washington and they were in Delaware. And I think this concoction that he was just home and he was this regular Joe taking care of them is really not true. It was born out of sympathy for him, out of the terrible tragedy that took the life of his wife and their sister, Hunter and Bose. But the truth is, Joe Biden is not a good dad. No good dad who knows that he's got an addicted son, and I do mean a serious addict, would have allowed him to be in the prominent roles he was with respect to Burisma and CFC. He knew his son was addled. He used him. I'm very certain. This is my opinion, but I'm very certain of it. He wasn't some passive recipient of 10% to the big guy. I think it was his scheme to use Hunter and his associates to go and get this $50,000 a month from Ukraine and dispatch him to different organizations to use the Hunter Biden name, the Biden name, to supplement the income. And he didn't care how addled his son was, nor does he care about that today in issuing the pardon. It's not because his poor addicted son committed crimes and deserves our empathy. I don't want him getting cross-examined, and I pardon him, and in effect pardon myself by doing this.
Don't you think that's why? I mean, as a non-lawyer, I've always looked at pardons. You commit this crime, you're pardoned for this crime. The reason, in my opinion, that it was a blanket pardon is because Joe Biden knows that there's a lot more there, and this covered everything.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be reading the tea leaves. That's not pure speculation to come to that conclusion. Just look back at what has happened. His Department of Justice slow-rolled this entire investigation into Hunter Biden's foreign business ties. He absolutely could have been charged with acting as a foreign agent, which is, we've seen against members of the Trump administration. The DOJ loves that charge when it's a Republican they're looking at. Hunter Biden did way more with these foreign governments without disclosing it than even somebody like a Paul Manafort did, but got completely away with it. The tax fraud he wasn't filing tax returns. He was hiding income. He was saying that his payments to strippers and prostitutes were business expenses. And then he wanted to turn around and say, and any one of us, no one would have been prosecuted for that kind of behavior. No one would have been prosecuted. He only got targeted because his name is Hunter Biden. It's like, I can guarantee you, Sean Spicer, you 100% would have been prosecuted for doing 1/10 of what Hunter Biden did.
Not only that, but look, again, on the gun thing, this is what their whole mantra is, that we need stricter gun control measures to prevent things. There needs to be more background checks. They need to be stricter. So let me get this straight. One, you didn't pay your taxes, millions of dollars. So the rich must pay argument is out the window. And now you can lie on a background check to possess a weapon, even though you're addicted to drugs or have mental health issues, is okay, as long as you're attached to the big guy.
Yes. And it's infuriating because he plays this card, with such boldness, right? Like, he's an addict and this crime never would have been prosecuted against someone not named Biden. It's like, first of all, you're the one who ramped up the penalties for this particular gun form crime. So you have yourself to blame. And you have no sympathy for all the others who went to jail based on this law, none whatsoever, just your own son. And this charge is just one of the many. This is the smallest charge. This is one of the only ones that remained viable because your DOJ intentionally let all the statute of limitations run on the most serious crimes against Hunter. This is what the two whistleblowers said. And the statute of limitations would have run on the remaining crimes if the whistleblowers had not come forward and generated the publicity that publicly shamed David Weiss into bringing these charges ultimately that he did bring on the taxes and the gun. I mean, so The entire time, the DOJ slow rolled it. It worked to great effect to protect Hunter. And only when the whistleblowers came forward and said, this is an outrage, did they kind of have to bring the remaining lame charges that would have been brought with gusto against anyone. And now we have Biden saying, oh, it's only because he's a Biden. And by the way, a drug-addled one.
But wouldn't that same, I mean, it's funny, that argument was absent when it was coming to Trump, when Letitia James and Alvin Bragg and all of these folks were playing like a wicked game of Tetris to try to say, well, we'll extend we won't even tell you what the charge is in New York for these multiple misdemeanors that we're now trying to go after President Trump on. That was okay. He was silent when that was happening. Now suddenly it's only because he's Biden. When it's selective prosecution of his enemies, it's okay. When you try to kick them off the ballot, it's okay. When you come after a Biden, well, that's a different set of rules. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder, I don't even wonder. I will say this unequivocally. I don't think that Hunter is the last person with the name Biden that receives a pardon before January 20th at noon.
Definitely. I agree. Jim Biden's definitely going to get one.
Jim's
and maybe we'll see Joe Biden pardon himself, which I think Trump should do when he assumes office. He should definitely not leave office without pardoning himself. These vultures are going to go after Trump again. Even Jack Smith, in dismissing the 2 federal indictments against him, wanted them dismissed without prejudice, meaning he can refile. So there'll be a legal challenge about whether Trump can pardon himself, but he should definitely try and get that going. And maybe Joe Biden will cross that bridge first, because I do believe he was part of the Biden family crime family. I think there's plenty of evidence he was involved. Wait, I want to say one other thing. What's worse? Not filing any tax returns when you've made millions of dollars, not disclosing any of the income that you've made that you don't think you have to pay taxes on, and lying about, your stripper expenses being business expenses, or writing down in a book that a NDA payment is for legal services as it was negotiated by your lawyer, and then putting that book on a shelf and no one ever sees it or relies on it in any way. Those are the 2 alleged crimes.
Even with the banks, by the way, on the other charge they got him in New York, it wasn't that there was a victim. They literally were making up. The banks were like, no, we're good. We were happy with our interest payments that we got off the loans that he took. We paid them in full. And yet they're going after him, but he didn't actually pay his taxes. This is a mantra of Democrats. The rich must pay their fair share, except when your name is Hunter. And I think that to me it's the hypocrisy, which is not shocking in Washington. I mean, let's be clear. But let me just pivot to this, because there's this school of thought within some. I'm not one of them, but there are some that say President Trump should be the bigger man. He should forget all of this. Let Biden retire to Rehoboth or whatever home he goes to, and move on and pivot and not investigate any of this and let Hunter go off into the wilderness. And we should be the bigger people and turn the page. What do you think about those people?
They're wrong.
Right.
There was an incident, Sean, where I have 3 kids, a boy, girl, boy. And my little one and my old one, my 2 boys, shared a room. But the little guy got kicked out because my oldest son had a sleepover with a buddy. So the little guy had to go sleep in the sister's room, which has all these dolls in it, which he did not like. And he couldn't fall asleep. They were freaking him out. And he said, I hope Yates has to sleep in here the next time I have a sleepover. And I hope he has to look at all these dolls because I want him to feel the pain.
Wow.
That's how I feel about Joe Biden. He needs to feel the pain. I want him to feel the pain. And until the Democrats feel that pain, they're going to keep doing this. They've learned no lessons from the lawfare. Right. They're only disappointed it didn't work. And I 100% believe, unless they have real skin in that game, like, oh my God, they're going to lock some of us up now, they won't stop.
You know this because of your background. But I always tell people, like, when you get these letters from a congressional committee or Robert Mueller, I wasn't a target. I was, I don't know, I guess technically a witness or something. You're spending thousands of dollars not just to be represented so that you don't say something stupid or contradict something that they have or what have you. And I'm thinking to myself, to your point, like, these guys sit back and had no problem perpetuating that. The Sunday shows still have Adam Schiff on, despite the fact that he lied about the weaponization of intel using his position as a member of the House Intelligence Committee about what was in those documents, and they pay no penalty for that. We get dragged into a congressional committee or to a lawyer or to a federal prosecutor, you have to have an attorney who has a paralegal who has two friends. They all get paid something. And no one cared about the consequences of all the collateral damage that happened. And I'm with you. It's like at some point, why do we constantly have to be the better people? Let them understand what it's like to be investigated. Maybe at some point they'll stop, because here's the thing. I don't believe if we're the better people now that Jamie Raskin and Adam Schiff will stop. They'll go, okay, as soon as they get the House back, they're going game on again.
Absolutely right. I mean, this is what led to my reunion and reconciliation with Steve Bannon when I was in the midst of the lawfare, and I said, "Oh my God, like I never thought I'd say this, but Steve Bannon was right. We need Steve Bannon. You know, we need to fight dirty." And Steve is pretty open about the fact that he's fine with that, if, you know, given what the stakes are. And we are talking about serious stakes. It's not just the presidency. We're talking about the United States of America and its future, and whether we're going to have any sort of institutions left. And I mean, like,
look at Steve though, and he was on the show the other day. I didn't realize this. He's the only person to ever serve that sentence as a misdemeanor in Danbury. He was like, do you understand that this wasn't a Camp Fed? He's like, this is a real prison. I'm the only person in the prison's history to serve time there for a misdemeanor. And no one cared because it was Steve Bannon and he's the devil and we need to get him. But the man went to jail for 4 months, lost 4 months of his life because of a sham committee. That, by the way, we now know, I mean, not to get off on a tangent, that Liz Cheney went around Cassidy Hutchinson's attorney, Stefan
violated ethics.
Right, violated ethics, but it's all in pursuit of what I call the greater good. As long as Democrats are doing what they believe is in the, quote, greater good, it's okay. And it doesn't matter if the law is actually followed. Nobody is feeling bad for Steve Bannon. But the reality is that some of these folks where lawfare has come into play have been financially crippled. Their careers have been destroyed. Stefan Passantino got dragged through the mud, the attorney that represented Cassidy Hutchinson. And it's only now that we find out that Liz Cheney and Alyssa Farah were going behind his back and having secret meetings with his client, Cassidy Hutchinson, and Liz Cheney to subvert testimony from her. I mean, it was insane.
Knowing she was represented by counsel. They knew that.
Correct.
And she's a lawyer and she didn't care. So it's definitely an ethical violation. No, I mean, Peter Navarro went to jail. Steve Bannon went to jail. It's the same alleged violation that Merrick Garland committed, that Eric Holder committed. Why didn't they have to go to jail? Why is it only people on the Republican side?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, and so some point, this is where I hope that we have some stones this time. Like all of these congressional committees that the Republicans control, at least for the next 2 years, have subpoena power. Get these folks in there, get them under oath, and now go refer them to a Department of Justice controlled by a Trump Department of Justice Attorney General, and do what they did. Why are we the only ones that have to suffer for this financially, career-wise, reputationally, etc.?
No, I mean, I've got a lot of smart friends who are more, you know, they're classy. Yeah, they're not like you and I are, at least today, Sean, where I'm ready to street fight. I really am. I'm ready to put on my brass knuckles and go out there. It's just, I've had enough with the lawfare. But they would say the win was the revenge. Trump's win was the revenge.
I know.
And I say no, because you and I both know as soon as they are back in power, they will do it again. They've learned nothing. And so let's look into what Shifty Shift has done. I'm not saying like charge him when there's no evidence, but wouldn't we like to kick the tires a little bit on like his, whatever, the daughter's money raising scheme? Or what about Hillary Clinton? I bet there's plenty of gold to mine in the Clinton Foundation. Sure would like to. I wonder if there'll be an anonymous tip from somebody that might cause the DOJ to get interested. I'm just saying, I'm sorry. I know it's untoward. I know it's not highbrow, but those days are gone thanks to the Democrats. And the only way to get back to them, which is the end goal, is to make them feel the pain. They too must suffer or they'll continue.
Exactly. Right. If we keep being the better person, taking the higher ground, then they go, this is easy. We get to do this to you. You always say that you'll turn the page. I mean, it's so blatantly stupid. We need to show them that two can play at the game. And speaking of that, there's been a lot of discussion about the White House briefing room. And I have a column that I'm putting out tonight in my newsletter that I talk about where reforms can get made. But a lot of people think that the White House briefing room should get opened to people like you, Joe Rogan, etc. And I've made the case that like that's available now. If Megyn Kelly wants to go on down to the White House briefing room, Well, maybe not in a cringe jump here, so I take that
I was
back.
going to say,
But
now?
but
I don't know
but
about
but
now.
when I was press secretary, anybody could get a day pass. That was a dirty little secret. You really want to come to a press briefing or come into a White House, just call yourself a journalist. I approved every single one of them, every one, for a day pass. I even approved, I think, every hard pass. But the reality is that if you want to come, but the question I have for you is, as they mull over these changes, both in protocol and procedure, what would you like to do? What would you like to see? Because obviously you do a show every day. You don't have the capability. I brought in 4 people by Skype every few press conferences where I allowed them to come up on a screen, ask a question, get treated like a journalist in the press briefing room. As somebody who does a show every day, do you want to see reforms? Do you want to have some role yourself or your team? What would you want to see?
Well, that's a great question. I have a couple of conflicting thoughts on it because number one, I think it would be good for Trump to have some more fair-minded journalists asking some questions. It can't be just Fox News in there, asking questions from a more right-wing perspective that Republicans might want the answer to. And I'm not talking about a love fest, but take some random issue like, well, let's take abortion. Okay. The Democrats are obviously, and that means all the media that's in there are going to come at that, whatever he's doing, if he's doing anything, and I don't think he will, but they would always come at it from the left. And it's not that a Republican would stand up there and say, yes, defend your wonderful policies, President Trump. It's that somebody from Fox or somebody from right-wing media might stand up and say, does this go far enough? Have you done something to protect doctors from having to perform these procedures? Questions that are interesting and relevant to the right half of the country. It's not a love fest. It's kind of hitting the press secretary from a different direction. It doesn't mean you're lovey-dovey. It means I understand what's important to this other half, the half that put him in office, and I'm here to ask their tough questions. So I think it would be good to have more of those folks in there, both under a Democrat and a Republican. But politically, what's best for Trump is to have it be as adversarial as possible. That's what the people want. And it doesn't hurt Trump to have these far left loons in there asking him these stupid questions, and then to have people like me doing shows comparing those reporters' performance when it was Joe Biden to the way they are in the room now that it's Donald Trump. So politically, I think Trump would probably get more coverage and he might enjoy seeing himself in the news more with the second part. But I think it's better for the country to see more added and more fair and balanced choices.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's not an either or. Like I said, I brought in voices from Skype. So I would say, you're a reporter from Montana. I brought in some from Rhode Island, where I grew up. I brought in talk show host Lars Larson came in. I think he's out in Oregon or Washington.
I remember Lars.
And the point was, to your question, to your point, it wasn't some like right-wing love fest. Like, hey, Sean, is Donald Trump great or the greatest? Please answer. It was, I think Lars asked something about federal land use and whether or not the government's role was going to be curtailed. And I mean, a very interesting question for a lot of Americans, especially out in the West. And they add a perspective. It's not that it's easy. It's different. It's not the same cookie cutter. And so I agree with you. I don't think that it's an either or. It's just get more voices in. And the other thing is,
I like doing both.
Call on them. I mean, no one, I tell people all the time, look at what my press conferences were. I started in the back of the room and moved forward. The first person I ever called on was Daniel Helper from the New York Post. These guys feel like because the White House Correspondents Association tells them, this isn't, go look it up, White House Correspondents Association.org or something. It says traditionally the Associated Press gets the first question. Then the press secretary is encouraged to work down the front row, the Washington Post, NBC, ABC. My view was, I don't care what you think. This is my press conference, not yours. I represent the president, not you. I think and where I've been trying to steer people in terms of the advice they give to Caroline Leavitt is, it's not about you, like them. It's about you. You take control. It's your briefing. You do what you want. Don't worry about what they want.
Oh, think about James Rosen, who's reporting now for Newsmax, who says it's been a year since he's been called on in the White House press briefing room. A year. So this administration is not shy about freezing out anyone whose questions they don't like. So why shouldn't there be some turnabout? Why take CBS News, which is on a one news organization mission right now to ruin Pete Hegseth. Every report they do is entirely negative. Their reporter who's, following him around Capitol Hill asks the most unfair, biased questions. Why would you reward that by calling on them first, second,
Right.
or third in the White House press
Or 10th.
briefing room? Yeah. Or they
All right,
can
let me
maybe
just
sit out. They can get the James Rosen treatment.
I want to touch on the nominees in a second. I agree with you. Like I called on John Gizzi. He alternates with James Houston, and he would ask these very tough questions about foreign policy. It's an and both, not an and or. But let me ask you this: if there is one thing that in 4 years from now you say, I really hope Donald Trump accomplished his fill in the blank, what is that?
Well, it's hard to pick just the one, but I mean, I will tell you just one absolute must do without question, or I'll be campaigning against him or the next Republican when he leaves, is he must revise Title IX to look the way it did under him the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he must undo all of Joe Biden's changes to Title IX. He must undo the new definition of women, which includes fake women, men posing as women, and mandates their access to our sports and our spaces, and takes away due process for young men who get accused on college campuses. If President Trump doesn't do that, then I was wrong to support him, and I misread what he would do as president. And I don't think he's going to put me in that position. I think he will do
because
exactly the right thing.
The thing I agree. I think the immigration, to me, border security is first and foremost. We don't have a country if we're not secure. But I agree with you because I don't understand. I've been very curious at the lack of non-conservative women speaking out against Title IX, because it was such a fight to get that. And then a bunch of men come along and take that away. And I'm going, how do you fight that hard to get that far and then just sit silently as it gets taken away from you?
Yeah. I guess they don't care about their daughters, because their daughters are the ones who are going to get hurt by these boys in the sport and exposed to penises running around their locker rooms at a tender age when they didn't expect that or want that or understand that. So they care more about their woke friends and impressing them with their empathy for these poor kids and community than they do about their own daughters' safety and comfort. And P.S. Sean, we don't need a reason. We don't need to say we feel unsafe or we feel uncomfortable. Get out. They're women's spaces. And the loudest advocates on this issue are men.
Issue, right?
They're men pretending to be women, trying to tell women we need to be quiet about our safety and comfort.
But when you say get out, I mean, I would feel unsafe. I mean, if I were a woman and someone came in dressed as a woman that was clearly a dude, I would worry for my safety. And for some reason, that's dismissed as being anti-trans.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a real issue. I mean, look at what happened in Virginia. A guy wearing a skirt sexually assaulted a young girl. If you want to go, and in Wisconsin, an 18-year-old senior male, intact, naked, came into the dressing room or the locker room when a bunch of freshman girls were showering post-gym and suddenly got exposed to a penis in the locker room. And we could talk about the injuries that have happened in sports. I've got a lot of examples for that. I mean, one girl's got permanent brain damage and paralysis as a result of what they've done. But let me say something about it. The real problem too is that an actual person, and what I mean by that is somebody with genuine gender dysphoria. It's like they actually have this condition that's in the DSM-5 as a mental disorder. And it's a very minuscule percent of the population. And that's the population that we were dealing with 20 years ago. Maybe not with enough empathy back then. But those are the people who really have this thing. The vast majority of these people don't have this thing. It's a social contagion, and it's gotten some weird currency in the culture where we're encouraging it, and it leads to body parts being chopped off and sterility. But my point is that if you actually have gender dysphoria as a man who's pretending to be a woman, you would never want a woman to see you without your clothes on. Ever. You wouldn't want anyone. You want them to think you're an actual woman. So the mere fact that you've got this naked man parading around in the women's locker room tells you this is more than likely a deviant. This is a man with a sexual fetish, or he gets off in posing as a woman. And I don't want that next to my naked ninth grader.
Right. You mentioned CBS and Pete Hegseth. I think there's a new dog whistle word in Washington, which is qualification. So they say, Pete, we're concerns about Pete Hegseth qualification, Kash Patel's qualifications. Okay, so let's just Kash Patel, Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense, Senior Director, National Security Council, longtime federal public defender for the Department of Justice. Pete Hegseth, 2-time Bronze Star recipient, deployed to Gitmo, Iraq, Afghanistan, ran a veteran service organization. Those are qualifications. This is a new code word that the media uses to basically say we don't like them, or they're going to change the system that we don't appreciate, the status quo. But that's how the media is now couching their disdain for these nominees.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're like, RFKJ is not a doctor. Well, neither is Xavier Becerra, and neither was Kathleen Sebelius. Like, since when do you have to be a doctor to be head of HHS? That's not it's an administrative role where you're thinking about policy. We know who is a doctor: Marty McCary, who's going to be atop FDA, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's going to run the National Institutes of Health. Makes perfect sense. Why is it only when a Republican is making the appointments that we suddenly need advanced medical degrees to run various, departments? Well, we know why. And the politics of personal destruction have just, I've just had it. I've really had it. This same team, Team Blue, spent the last 3 months ignoring the fact that the would-be first gentleman and the current second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, has been very credibly accused of wailing on a woman in the face in public. They didn't give two figs about it. And now they're really, really interested on how many times Pete Hegseth cheated on his wife or wives. And by the way, they didn't care anything about the Doug Emhoff cheating on his first wife nanny allegation either. So I've just kind of had it with the personal destruction of these people, whether it's under the guise of qualifications or their newfound morality.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the Doug Emhoff thing. I had literally forgotten about that. It's interesting how these allegations matter sometimes. But I guess if you're going to become the first gentleman of the United States married to the president of the United States, it doesn't really matter. Because,
if you're a woman abuser.
Yeah, it's totally different. All right. The last thing I want to ask you is there's a story from the Wall Street Journal about it says coming in from the cold. Corporate America is unleashing an unorthodox campaign to influence Donald Trump's agenda in the weeks leading up to his second inauguration, a period that is under. They're talking about scrubbing their websites of DEI, trying to get on Joe Rogan and shows like yours. To me, is this a win or is this just a cover up?
It's a win.
Good. I agree.
It's a win. Get down lower. Beg.
We're on the same page on this. I'm like, you guys, not only that, I want you to buy spots. I want you to, I'm with you. This is
and we're going to be checking in, at least semi-annually to make sure that there's not a hint of your corrosive, disgusting, racist, sexist programs lingering. And I want to see how many whites you've hired and how many men you've hired at the end of every year.
All right.
Prove to me
Megyn
you're not
Kelly, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to be on with you.
Right back at you, Sean.
All right. Merry Christmas, by the way. I just enjoy saying that now.
We can say it Merry again. Christmas, my friend.
All right. Take care.
Lots of love.
What a great conversation with Megyn Kelly. She never disappoints. All right, guys, as you get ready for Christmas, one thing I want to tell you about, I've told you before on different products that we shopped with our wallet. We voted with our wallet. We voted for change in November, and let's vote for change with our wallet. Let's vote for new products. I've looked for alternatives to Amazon and Walmart where I can get household essentials and other stuff. I'm talking deodorant, cleaning supplies, even makeup, like in wipes and everything. So I have found a shop that meets all of those needs. It's family owned, conservative values, supports American jobs. Almost everything is made here in America. It's got a non-toxic cleaning line. They don't even have to have safety caps on them because that tells you everything you need to know. All hair care, skin care, and makeup exceeds standards that Europe sets out. We've heard a lot about that. It's such a better alternative to Amazon and Walmart. So do me a favor. 2 million people have already joined in this effort. I've set up a little shop. If you text this number, you'll get a video explaining exactly what I'm talking about, how you can get in on this. So text 276-500-1185. The number's on your screen and in the show notes as well. 276-500-1185. Just text it and you'll get a quick video to tell you exactly what I'm talking about. It has changed so much of my life. All right. Because I now have products that I feel confident in, that are made in America, that are safer, support American jobs, and are consistent with my values. All right. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, we will still have a show. Okay. So you wrap the presents, have dinner, and want to watch Chairman of the RNC, Mike Whatley, Bill O'Reilly will join us. It's amazing. And tons of information every Tuesday and Friday in my newsletter, SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for it. I've got information on my thoughts, stuff that I'm reading that I don't get to in the show, plus all sorts of information on the inauguration. Check it out. Merry Christmas. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.